Hello everyone! Last week we talked about Varian fighting with the force of Azeroth against the Threat the Nightmare and also kicking Moira out of her stolen throne and forming the Council of Three Hammers. He has gained control over the Fury Within by going through the Worgen ritual and he's led the Worgen against the force of the Horde and into the Alliance. His fear over losing Anduin pushed him to do the unthinkable, use his might against his own precious son, to which the prince left his father to join up with Velen and the Draenei and learn more about the light. The prince had already sent a letter to his father, telling him that he wanted to assure him that when he completed his own path with the light, that he would return to Stormwind. Varian wondered if Malfurion or Tyrande were responsible for this, but they had nothing to do with it. This happy news was from Anduin all by himself, and on Remembrance Day, a yearly holiday in which the Alliance honors the great heroes of the past, Anduin finally returned home. There was still a rift between father and son. Varian still had doubts about Anduin being ready to lead the kingdom. At his age, he had already mastered the sword and was ready to meet Alliance enemies in the battlefield, while Anduin was still on the quest of finding out who he really was and what his place was within the circle. This rift would need healing, and it was Archbishop Benedictus who had a gift for both the king and the prince. He invited the king to meet him at Tiffin's memorial, while he brought Anduin himself, not mentioning that his father would actually be there. The gift was finishing a quest given to him long ago by Varian, finding the key to Tiffin's locket. Varian felt something moving deep within him. "Thank you, Benedictus. You're a good man. I hesitate to think what I'd do without you." The Archbishop bowed his head. "Please, allow me to leave you to it." He turned to go, and as he did, he waved his arm once more. "Peace be with you both," he said, and he disappeared down the path into a grove of trees. Varian stood there, turning the silver key over and over, wondering about the Archbishop's strange farewell. Finally, he noticed that Anduin was watching him. All the harsh things he wanted to say to his son, they were of no consequence now. He realized only one thing was true. Anduin was more important than all of it. It was so clear. The king gave both the locket and the key to his son. They remembered Tiffin, dearly beloved wife and sorely missed mother. The unspoken words finally came out of them. Varian had been blind in seeing the man that Anduin was becoming, while Anduin spoke the words he had always wanted to say. He wished so much that he was more like his father. He wants to be a great king, but he's not as strong. He wiped his tears angrily, as if they were a sign of weakness. Varian put his arm around his son. "No, Anduin. You have more courage than I do, and it flows from a place deep within your heart. Remember what your Uncle Magni used to say? Strength comes in many forms." They both repeated the last part of the line in unison. Both small and large. Varian and son are each on their own journey of becoming more than they were, and in this moment they healed the rift that had grown between them. Varian wished that the moment could last forever, but he knew that it could not. Looking up, he scanned his surroundings. "So, tell me, from what direction do you think the ambush will come?" Those that have played during the Cataclysm, you might remember fighting Archbishop Benedictus in the Hour of Twilight dungeon. With the coming of Deathwing, he had looked into the eyes of the dragon, and he had despaired. He turned away from the church and joined the Twilight's Hammer cult, which had now shown up to close the trap around Anduin and Varian. The prince and the king would not go down without a fight though. Lo'Gosh did everything in his power to defend his son, while Anduin shot arrow after arrow, aiding his father in taking out the assassins. However, there was a summoner in the back, putting all his efforts in creating a portal. Something big was summoned into Stormwind, and despite their best efforts, they were unable to stop him in time. Before them was the biggest Draconic they had ever seen. The enormous half-dragon, half-man monster was adorned from head to tail in colossal purple armor, bearing the marks of the Twilight's Hammer cult, its thick plates burning with protection spells. Father and son, with their backs against the wall, they tried to bring the beast down, but he was simply too much. Anduin fired the last of his arrows into the beast, but they were like gnats on a knoll. He could only watch in anguish as his father tried in vain to deflect the enormous power of the monster, trying to keep his son safe from the axe whistling down with savage glee. Varian felt the burning bite of the blade slice through his armor and then continue deep into his ribcage. The violent impact slammed the king to the ground, but his eyes never left Anduin as he sought to make sure that his child was free from harm. Their gazes met, and Varian's eyes softened with relief that his son was unhurt, but as the dust settled, Anduin's own stare grew wide with horror at what he saw. Varian lay sprawled and twisted, with the Draconid's axe buried deep in his chest. Anduin let out a wail of anguish as the moment stretched out like an eternity. Varian looked deep into his son's eyes and let him know that everything was alright. This is how it always ends with Wrynn kings. The Draconid stood over Varian and laughed as the Broken King coughed and pleaded with his stare for Anduin to do him one last favor. "Run," Varian whispered as a cool and gentle blackness slowly enveloped him. "Let me be the last to pay this price." The creature sneered down at the king, pulling the axe out of Varian's chest. It was a strangely numb tug. There was no more pain, no more sadness. Varian knew that he would die as he had lived. The creature raised a wet blade overhead, its notched and bloody surface glistening in the setting sun. How peaceful it is here, Tiffin. But Anduin wasn't about to leave his father's side. With arms wide to the sky, a golden nova of holy energy forced the monster to retreat as the prince advanced, strong and fearless, like a king. As Anduin shouted the word "Barrier," the graveyard seemed to blur and shimmer around the king and the prince. His affinity to the light, his faith, was his only weapon right now, and it was powerful enough to keep the creature away. As the draconic charged, the boy stood firm, surrounded by an aura of holy light. He opened his palms to the sky and spoke the words to dispel magic. With each word, the earth resonated with energy, shaking the gravestones and sending a ripple across the surface of the lake. A flash of fire exploded from the sky and hit the draconic as he rushed in. The inferno blinded the beast, and he stumbled toward the serene silhouette of Anduin, the hideous creature screaming in both pain and rage. As the draconic fell, his armor quickly faded to a dull grey, no longer protected by dark magics. At the last possible moment, it was Varian who lunged forwards with everything that he had left in his body, and he struck the beast down. Somewhere in his mind, Varian could hear a scream that was half a battle cry, half agony, but he wasn't sure if it had come from him or the creature. Then everything went black. Somewhere far away, Varian felt Anduin was there. He opened his eyes to see his son holding him, the boy's tears mixing with the king's pooling blood. "I am so sorry, father." Anduin managed through his tears. Varian opened his eyes again and tried to smile. "No, it is I who am sorry, for not seeing earlier what you are, what you've always been. I am so proud that you are my son." Varian reached up with his bloody hand to touch the boy's smeared cheek. "Do not mourn for me, Anduin. This has always been my fate. Do not let it be yours." "No, this is not how it ends," he shook the king. "Do you hear me, father? A Wrynn prince will not again watch the loved one die before him. This is not our fate." Anduin screamed into the sky, and the clouds seemed to part in sympathy. The prince closed his eyes and slowly began to chant. At first, it was a soft and gentle sound, but as his voice rose in crescendo, it became a beautiful and powerful song. As the words came, his hands began to glow with light. Faint at first, then brighter and brighter, until it was competing even with the setting sun, bathing the entire cemetery in shadowless light of midday. The song reached a fever pitch, and the young priest lifted his eyes and voice to the heavens, calling to the very heart of the cosmos for a source of divine power. Suddenly, liquid rays brighter than 1,000 suns burst from Anduin's fingertips, penetrating the king's body and painting everything in a brilliant yellow glow. Varian's entire being was rocked by an influx of pure light, and at the center of it all was Anduin, holding his father close, while a vortex of infinite beauty danced between them. Then, in sharp contrast to the intense swirling energy billowing all around, the prince began to speak with a melodious and gentle voice as he carefully laid his hands on the immobile king's forehead and quietly, peacefully began to pray. Now there's a bit of a discussion as to what exactly happened here. Some say that this is describing a massive healing spell or something like lay on hands, but I personally like to think that this is one of the few canon moments in which resurrection was actually used in the story. Anduin bringing his father back from the dead, breaking the tradition of the Wrynn child having to see the father die. Father and son went side by side through the Cataclysm, but Varian himself didn't have a massive role to play as the story that focused more on Thrall and taking on Deathwing. Meanwhile, Warchief Garrosh was ready to carve out the world that he envisioned, with his next target being Theramore. He summoned his Horde troops to lay siege upon Proudmoore City, to which bane he sent Petter Stormhoof to warn Jaina about the coming attack. He would not forsake his duties to the Horde, but he could also not live with himself if he didn't give it a fair warning, since she had been an ally in the past and had tried to do her best to form some sort of peace between the Alliance and the Horde. This didn't matter to Garrosh though. In fact, it actually helped him out, since his plan was to let Jaina get as many troops of the Alliance in as she could, which he could wipe out with one single strike. They had stolen the focusing iris from the blue dragonflight and had the Blood Elves turn it into a mana bomb. Naturally, Varian and the Alliance, they sent in troops to support, even the Kirintor offered her aid, and Theramore was hit hard from both outside and within.
"We're gonna turn this place into a sinkhole!"
Jaina Proudmoore saw her city and loved ones get destroyed by Garrosh and the Horde. The mage Ronin pushed her through a portal as he drew the bomb onto himself and into their magical wards to minimize the explosion. The one who had sacrificed so much to bring the Alliance and Horde closer together, she now saw all that she believed in swept away in the tides of war.
"No one can protect you. Kill the Proudmoore wench, and bring me that bomb!
Your people are despicable cowards, Orc. You're nothing more than rabid dogs, and you will be put down!
Brave words, mage. I'll spit in your face when you beg for mercy.
You spit on mercy? Then you will have none! You want carnage? Garrosh will get more blood than he ever bargained for!
Theramore was nothing but a crater, and the one peaceful Jaina, she's now out for blood. She picked up the focusing iris and she made her way to Stormwind to ask Varian for aid. By now, you could probably guess Varian's reaction. He told Jaina to calm down and not do anything rash. Wait, what? Varian Wrynn doesn't immediately call out for the orcs their heads? That's right, the High King of the Alliance, he's learned much in his time, and now the roles are reversed. Now it's Varian trying to make Jaina see reason. They will strike back at the Horde, but if they're going into World War, then they'll have to do it wisely. They've got to rebuild the fleet, they lost good people at Theramore, which will take time to call back others from their post to fill their positions. The Horde has set up blockades around the entire continent, and they have to do this right, or else they'll just be throwing more lives away. I don't know what happened to you, Varian Wrynn, but you've turned into a coward. And you, Anduin, I'm sorry for my part in keeping you a gullible child. There's no hope for peace. There's no time for strategy. I have the ruination in my grasp. You're a fool for not seizing the chance. They spoke her name at once, father and son, so different but so oddly similar in how they stepped forward imploringly. She turned her back on both of them. Varian and Anduin talked long into the evening. The man who had once identified with Jaina's new attitude and the boy who quailed from it talked about what grief and loss could do to someone, talked about what war and violence as well could do. Even Anduin could see that they had to attack the Horde. They had shown them what they were willing to do, and they must prevent them from harming more innocent people, but they didn't have to do it with hate in their hearts. The king swelled with pride at his son's words. He had not expected such acceptance, reluctant though it was from Anduin. He was honestly surprised that he himself hadn't shared Jaina's feelings, and realized how far he had come from the man he had once been. He had made great progress, and perhaps one day would even be as wise as his son. For now though, the Alliance prepared their fleet, and Anduin, he had requested to stay within Stormwind until the fleet had sailed. After which, he would return to his studies with the Draenei. In the meantime, Jaina went on with her own plans, using the focusing iris to strike Orgrimmar hard and fast. They would no doubt be celebrating their victory, all gathered in one place, leaving them open for a tidal wave that Jaina was planning to release on all those inside. The men, women and children, all of Orgrimmar would die. She spent her days gathering the elemental force of water, who screamed out in protest. World Shaman Thrall, he heard them calling out to him, and together with the Blue Dragon Caligos, he was able to make Jaina see reason that this was not the way. Garrosh is a thief and a coward and a butcher, but she was doing precisely what he had, right down to using the same artifact that had obliterated Theramore. This is not truly what she wished to do. She didn't want to become a Garrosh or even an Arthas, and their words were able to change her mind. She would not use this tidal wave that she'd created to wipe out Orgrimmar. Instead, she would use it to defend her people, since in the meantime, Varian and the Alliance fleet, they'd also made their way to Orgrimmar, and despite all their clever planning, Garrosh had his own tricks to use against them. He had his shaman raise Kraken from the deep, Kraken with huge tentacles that whipped about vessels, closing around it in a parody of a loving embrace. The Warchief did not just send creatures of the deep to do his fighting, he too, Gorha on hand, jumped into the fight. For the third time, Varian and Garrosh clashed their weapons, and 3 times too many for Garrosh's taste. This time, he would finish the job, kill Varian and all that he loved. He would march onto Stormwind, take his precious boy, slap him into chains, and parade him through Orgrimmar. He had fought to anger the King of Stormwind, that the human would explode in fury, fighting wildly instead of well. To his astonishment, Varian merely grinned, dodging the swing of the axe, measuring his next step. "Anduin might surprise you," he said. "Even lovers of peace despise cowards." Their battle was once again interrupted, this time by a Kraken, and Varian saw that despite the Horde fleet being vastly outnumbered, Garrosh's tactics of using the Kraken, it was doing insane amounts of damage to the fleet. They would have probably lost the whole fleet, was it not for Jaina riding on Caligos' back and sending her water elementals to save the fleet. She had not expected them to be there. She thought that they would focus on breaking the blockade at Darkshore or Theramore strongholds. If she had truly sent out her tidal wave, then she would have destroyed both Orgrimmar and the whole Alliance fleet. Luckily, that didn't happen, and Jaina was able to turn the tide of battle. She and the Alliance were able to defeat the Horde and reclaim Northwatch Hold. Jaina would move on to take up position as leader of the Kinator. She would replace Ronin, while Varian returned home to his city to rebuild their fleets and plan out the war. Garrosh was forced to call for the full retreat, bring his ships home from their blockades, and lick his wounds. He could not believe that this had happened, but he wasn't ready to give up either, quite the opposite. He would simply escalate this war. It was no longer about just claiming Kalimdor. He wanted to see the Alliance wiped out and Wrynn dead at his feet. A war not for control of a single continent, but for the conquest of this very world. A war that would find its way into previously hidden lands, as Anduin's ship, presumably on its way to bring it back to the Draenei, it finds itself under fire and shipwrecks on the land of Pandaria.
We've made a thorough inspection of the wreckage, Your Majesty. There is no sign of Admiral Taylor or his ship.
200 ships at my disposal, yet the one carrying my son goes missing. What of their last message? Show me whatever you have.
We have been drawn off course. Horde air fleet. Many casualties. Shipwrecked on an uncharted isle. But the White Pawn is accounted for. Repeat, the White Pawn is safe.
Anduin.
Surprise attack! Requesting immediate, if anyone's received.
Sir, the 7th Fleet has already been dispatched, but it could take weeks before it...
There's no time to waste. We'll send a small elite force to secure this new land and bring back my son.
An elite force, amongst them members of the SI-7 and the players, including the Pandaren from the Wandering Isle, who've been recently accepted into the Alliance after kicking the crap out of Varian. They're sent out to recover Prince Anduin, while the rest of the fleet, they take a little bit longer to get there. Garrosh is informed about this new land, and he also sends his Horde forces in, but not to recover Anduin. Instead, he wants...
Redirect the invasion fleet. General, you and your best veterans will pave our way. Storm the shore, and paint this new continent red!
The war between the Alliance and Horde has made its way to Pandaria, and this is probably the worst place to fight it out, since the land is infected with a dark force known as the Shah. Our negative emotions, they empower the Shah, causing massive devastation to the land and all kinds of problems for the people of Pandaria. The Alliance does eventually track down Anduin, while also cleaning up the mess that we made, and 2 months later, Garrosh and his Horde forces, as well as Varian and the fleet, they finally arrive in Pandaria. The king asked for the adventurers to help him with setting up the Alliance base and learning the ways of the land. With that came a little lesson in patience for both the king and Tyrande Whisperwind.
We have them cornered inside the temple. We should strike now.
Things are rarely what they seem, Tyrande. And my son tells me this is a sacred place.
All the more reason to purify it.
They're defending a fixed position. I'm not gonna play their game. We'll draw them out.
You are wasting precious time.
You three are my eyes and ears. Fan out! Prepare a defense!
A test, a trial of patience. Will the wolf behave as a warrior or a king?
Commander Skargash and the Horde forces, they've taken over the blessed temple of Chi-Ji, the Red Crane. It's up to us to get them out. Tyrande wants to charge in headfirst and root them out as fast as possible, but Varian is a little bit more cautious. He's fought Garrosh enough times to know that things don't always are what they seem to be, so he has us gather resources and place a few traps.
They're coming. Get behind the defenses.
Alliance dogs, where are your teeth?
Come out and count them, coward! There's no army here. Only a handful of heroes stand between you and the King of Stormwind. Are you afraid?
Bring up the grunts! Attack!
A massive force was ready to ambush us, but Varian, he's able to turn the tables, play on the orcs' sense of pride, and draw them right into our traps. Wow, you don't mess around with the Pandaren, and after taking out the bulk of the forces without sacrificing a single life, only a handful of the Kor'kron and the commander are left. They quickly fall, and the temple is saved.
The day is ours, and not a drop of blood was shed on holy ground.
I would have charged right in. Many more lives would have been lost in my rush for victory.
There was a time when I would have done the same. But I've learned a lot over the years. I've fallen for too many of Garrosh's tricks. From now on, we define the terms of this engagement. Tyrande, I may not be a politician, but I am a fighter. I know we can win this war. We need to stand together. You have to trust me. Know that I will do the right thing. If we act as one, we cannot fail.
I see that now. Our strength is yours to command, High King. May this be the first of many victories.
A sword is the weapon of a warrior, but patience is the weapon of kings. This day brings victory, but more difficult trials lie ahead.
They do indeed, since throughout our questing, we figure out that Garrosh is after the Divine Bell, an ancient Mogu artifact used to harness the power of the Shah. Varian also tries to convince Jaina to use the Kirin as a weapon against the Horde, but despite what has happened with Theramore, Jaina isn't willing. She spent her time talking with Caligos about power and how it should be used.
Every day I ask myself, what's the right thing to do? Anduin, you know more than anyone. It's important to separate the Horde from its people. The Sun Reavers still operate within this city. Alliance and Horde work together. As long as we stay above the war, then there's hope for the world as a whole. I see our city as a beacon of light showing the way. If we can trust one another here, then there's hope for the rest of the world.
Their city could be a beacon of light, showing the way for all, but that mindset would soon enough change. The Alliance was able to track down the Divine Bell before the Horde got their hands on it, and they stored it within Darnassus so that its power could not be used. The Sun Reavers within the Kirin they were then used by Garrosh to infiltrate Darnassus, steal the bell, and bring it back to Garrosh. Jaina finds out about this, and she's not happy to be betrayed from within once again. She gives the order to purge Dalaran without talking to Varian first, shattering his plans for the future.
Jaina, what's happening in Dalaran? Has there been an attack?
The Kirin was betrayed from within. I've handled the situation.
How?
I've purged the Horde from Dalaran. You have what you wanted, Your Majesty. The Kirin belongs to the Alliance.
But you said that—
I know what I said. My trust was misplaced.
What of the Sin'dorei, the Sun Reavers?
Those that surrendered are being taken to the Violet Hold. I make no guarantees about those who chose to fight.
Jaina, you need to talk to me before you act.
How I run the Kirin is my business.
I was trying to negotiate with the Sin'dorei. I was opening discussions to bring them into the Alliance. By attacking their people, you forced their hand.
They chose their own path.
You've driven them back to the Horde.
You're fooling yourself. Once Horde, always Horde. I see that now. I'm mobilizing the Kirin
Jaina, we've got to work together on this. The Alliance must act as one.
Don't get soft on me, Varian.
Meanwhile, Anduin goes about researching a way to stop Garrosh, and he finds out about a mallet created long ago by the Pandaran, which holds the power to turn the darkness of the Divine Bell into something good. His search leads to us freeing the Monkey King, earning his trust, finding the pieces, and restoring the harmonic mallet. With this weapon, the prince then confronts the Warchief as he's testing out the Divine Bell on his soldiers, and Anduin actually has the balls to stop him in his tracks. But Garrosh, he isn't too happy with the prince.
Your interference has cost me a great warrior, young prince. You'll pay with your life!
That is where you are wrong, Garrosh. The Mogu made the Divine Bell to create chaos, but the Pandaran created a special mallet to turn the echoes of that chaos into perfect harmony. That mallet was hidden for thousands of years, until now.
Die, whelp! Your alliance must be at its end if you're sending your children against me. I will let you live, so that you can tell your king of the price of his continued defiance.
Garrosh attacked my son? Where is he?
Anduin!
Oh, Anduin, what were you thinking? I should have sent you back to Stormwind.
He's alive, but his bones are shattered.
Send for Velen. Bring him here at once.
My king, I promise you, the Kirin Tor will come down on Garrosh so hard his ancestors will reel. Blood will pay for blood!
Jaina. I will end Garrosh for this. His horde already crumbles beneath him. We will deliver the final blow. Champion, you and Anduin thwarted the Warchief today, and won the Alliance a critical victory. But please, leave me now. I must tend to my son, and prepare for our next battle.
Anduin will take some time to heal, while Garrosh's horde is already crumbling and has been doing so for quite some time. Not everyone within the horde agrees with the direction that he has taken. Several of them have already spoken out, especially when they saw the bombing of Theramore, and taking the Divine Bell was not so much a choice as it was forced upon them, and then the troll leader Vol'jin, he was struck down by Garrosh's troops after speaking out. This led to the Darkspear rebellion, in which Vol'jin, after healing from his wounds, he returned to lead the rebellion against Garrosh. The Alliance got word of this and made contact with Vol'jin, pledging their support in bringing down Warchief Garrosh. The Alliance fleet is being prepared for the siege of Orgrimmar, while Varian, he's also looking for more troops for his campaign against the Horde.
Once upon a time, moments ago in fact, a great king sought help from a trio of powerful dwarves, the Council of Three Hammers. The king's scouts had discovered that Zandalari trolls threatened the Dwarven capital. Surely, the king thought, if he helped them with their troll problem, they would give him more troops for his campaign against the Horde. But what the king did not realize is that the dwarves did not trust one another. "We cannot help you," said the Bronzebeard dwarf. "For if we turn our back on the Dark Irons, they will defeat the Wildhammer and take over Ironforge." "We cannot help you," said the Wildhammer dwarf. "For if we turn our back on the Dark Irons, they will defeat the Bronzebeard and take over Ironforge." Oh, the king was furious. "If none of you help, then Ironforge will fall under siege." Only one dwarf offered to help the king. "We will lend you our strength," said Moira of the Dark Iron. "We will trust our dwarven brothers, and we will show them what loyalty means." And so Moira and the High King set out into the snow to save the city, leaving the others to think about their actions.
From once being pulled out of her bed to now working together, how times can change, and in this scenario we find out that the Zandalari, they're kicking up a storm. This is perfect to cover up potential ambushes and bloody disaster. Now if we can stop the storm, then Moira will lead the Forge Guard to the top herself, so we do just that, and together we take out Hakima the Wise, and we end the Zandalari threat to the Moreau.
Well fought. I see the Dark Irons are as formidable as ever.
That they are, King Varian. And at the service of the Alliance, I might add.
For that I'm glad. The Bronzebeards and Wildhammers will regret not having been here to share in your glory.
Better they're grateful for the clansmen spared death on this miserable hillock. We sought to protect and impress, not to shame.
Well, you've done just that. Come, let us return to Ironforge and announce your victory to the Council.
The High King, his champions, and the Dark Iron Dwarves worked together to save Ironforge. The other Dwarven leaders were ashamed of their behavior and vowed never again to allow fear or distrust to cloud their judgment. And so it was a human king who helped to unite the Dwarven clans so long divided. Free to trust one another, all three Dwarven leaders pledged their full strength to the Alliance cause. Meanwhile, in the city of Orgrimmar, Warchief Garrosh Hellscream sent Goblin dig teams all across the continent of Pandaria. He promised gold and riches to any who could discover for him the hidden secrets of this land that filled Pandaria with such a dark and powerful energy. To my surprise, his people have found something right here in the Sacred Vale. What will happen now?
What will happen now is a story for next week, since we've been going on for long enough. I honestly did not expect Varian to take so many parts, but I'm having an absolute blast with making these videos, and I hope you're enjoying them as well. As always, thank you very much for watching, everyone. Subscribe if you like my videos, leave a like if you enjoyed this one, and until next time, guys. See ya!